Hello, Fantasy Basketball Nation. This is Alex, and I'm here to bring you my first ever YouTube podcast. Now, I have to say, I am super excited to bring this to you. So my hope is that I'll be able to continue to post content, not only on my Instagram page, but also on YouTube. And if this video gets the support that I'm hoping it'll get, I'm actually planning to post my draft grades for every team across the NBA on YouTube and talk about them, because I feel like that'll really help out. So if I really want that to happen, so please like this video, subscribe, tell everyone you want. That would really mean a lot to me. So, alright, so that's all I have to say to start off. Now let's get started. Now this draft was a really interesting one in my mind. I enjoyed watching this one very much. So, obviously this is the day after the draft, so I'll be talking about the NBA draft that happened yesterday. So first I'm going to start off with trades, because that's something that not a lot of people have talked about so far, but they're a big part of the draft this year. So I'm just going to go over everyone and show my opinion on it. So the first one was between the Milwaukee Bucks and Toronto Raptors, and the Bucks got Greivis Vasquez, and the Raptors got the 46th overall pick Norman Powell, and their 2017 first round pick. Now, I think I don't fully understand why the Bucks would have done that. Vasquez is not young anymore, so I don't know why they'd give up a young talent in Norman Powell and their first round pick next year just for Vasquez, who's closing in on 30 years old now. And okay, that's it for the first trade. Now on to the second. Also, I forgot to mention, these trades have not been processed by the NBA yet, but they've been accepted, and they all should go through eventually. So technically, these trades are not 100% official. Now on to the next one. This one involves much bigger names in this year's draft. Now it's the Washington Wizards and Atlanta Hawks. The Wizards received the 15th overall pick, Kelly Oubre, and the Hawks got Jerian Grant, their 19th overall pick, and 2 second-round picks in the future. Now, I think Atlanta got a steal. If their team wasn't solid enough already, getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, this just improved it even more. Oubre, I'm thinking I'm not going to go as far to say he's a bust, but I will say he's a little overrated. And Grant, I feel like he's an efficient scorer. He's someone that the Hawks could use on that end of the floor. And second-round picks, you never know. Sometimes they can really add value off the bench. On to the third trade, another one with Atlanta. Now, this one involves the New York Knicks. Atlanta received Tim Hardaway, and the Knicks got Jerian Grant. So, I know I said they need Jerian Grant, but now they don't, because now they got rid of him. So, although I like the Hawks' original trade to get Jerian Grant, I don't think the second one was necessary. Hardaway, he has so much potential coming out of Michigan, or I should say he had so much potential coming out of Michigan. He hasn't really shown much. He's a 10-point scorer a game. I mean, maybe as he progresses, he'll get in that 10 to 15 range. I don't see anything special from him. And although Jerian Grant doesn't look like he can do a lot more than that, I think at least he's just coming out of college and he has some upside. I feel like he's much more upside than Hardaway, which is why I don't understand why they would do that. Now, this next trade is between the Minnesota Timberwolves and Cleveland Cavaliers. Minnesota received the 24th overall pick, Tyus Jones. Now, Tyus Jones, I'm going to get a little off track here and talk about Tyus Jones and how in the world he dropped to 24th. I'm wondering if these teams were blind to March Madness. I mean, he played extremely well, and I'm pretty sure he was the Final Four most outstanding player. He was great. As a freshman, he showed up, he was clutch, and I believe a team could really use someone like that. So I think the Cavaliers got a steal drafting him at 24th. I had him actually going 18th to the Rockets, and I think he actually would have been drafted there if Sam Dekker didn't fall all the way down. But he's a great player, so I think he has the potential to be a great player in the most important time. So I think he could be very valuable to Minnesota, especially given their current point guard situation with Ricky Rubio being constantly injured. And for that, Cleveland Cavaliers received the first pick in the second round, C.D. Osman. I'm sorry, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Raheem Christmas, and a 2019 second-round pick. What I don't understand about the pick is, by that time, LeBron James is going to be burnt out. They won't be title contenders, so I don't really understand why that 2019 second-round pick was necessary and why they needed it. But in terms of the players they got, those two players, I like them both. I think they both have some upside, and I think they both can add some value. I just don't know if it'll be to the degree of Tyus Jones. But I won't say the trade favored one team heavily either way. So maybe the Timberwolves slightly. And now it's the Brooklyn Nets, Portland Trailblazers. And I'm closing it on the end of these trades if you're getting bored here. The Nets received Steve Blake and the 23rd overall pick, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. And the Trailblazers received Mason Plumlee and Pat Connaughton, who was a 41st overall pick. I think the Trailblazers got a great deal here. I think Mason Plumlee, when Brook Lopez was injured and Mason Plumlee started at center, he was a monster. Double-double machine. I don't know why Brooklyn felt so willing to just throw him away. He is very valuable. And Pat Connaughton, if he chooses to take the path of basketball and doesn't play professional baseball, because he is supposedly a great baseball player at Notre Dame, he could be a valuable three-point shooter and just a general shooter, the Trailblazers. And the Nets, Steve Blake, I don't understand the value of. I mean, they need some help at point guard, but I don't really know if he's the answer. He's getting there in age. He's, well, not more than getting there. I'm pretty sure he's 35. And Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, I like. I just think he's a little bit overrated because I'm unsure if he can really improve his shot to the degree that everyone thinks he can. We'll have to see. I feel like Hollis-Jefferson, if he can improve that shot, he could end up to be a special player, but I'm doubting that. And I'm just going to skip over this trade. There was one between the Knicks and 76ers, and one between the Nets and Hornets. I just don't think it's necessary. Another smaller trade, the Clippers received one of the last picks in the draft, Michigan State's Brandon Dawson. The Pelicans received cash considerations. Minor, I know, not necessary to bring it up. Another minor trade, the Memphis Grizzlies received Andrew Harrison, the 44th pick. The Suns received John Lure. I think the Grizzlies got the advantage here because Harrison, again, he's a rookie. Or not even a rookie, he just got drafted, so I think, again, more upside. He could potentially do more. Because we already know what John Lure brings to the tables. We don't know what Andrew Harrison brings. And that's it for the trades. So I think I've covered those. So now it is time to move on to the picks themselves. Now, I don't want to give away too much since I will be doing a team analysis. I'm hoping either on Instagram or on YouTube. And also, I forgot to mention, if you found me on YouTube but not on Instagram, this is based off of an Instagram page, this YouTube account. So if you want to, if you like my videos on here, you'll most likely like my content on Instagram. And during the season, it's a lot of advice for fantasy basketball, and it's called at Fantasy Basketball Advice. All right, so anyway, back to it. Number 1 overall pick, Karl-Anthony Towns. If you saw my post on Instagram, you know how I feel. Great pick, obvious decision. I don't see any reason why they would have chosen D'Angelo Russell or Jahlil Okafor in that spot. I think he could potentially be the next Anthony Davis. I'm just watching him at Kentucky, and at times he just awes me. I think Towns is that talented. I think he's amazing. I think he can do everything. And with some polish and some growth, remember, he's still very young. With some polish and some growth, he will be an MVP candidate. I'll go as far to say he can become an MVP candidate if he progresses as expected. And I think he may be able to single-handedly bring this Minnesota team to the playoffs, possibly even next year. I think he can have somewhat of an impact next year. Now on to, I don't know if I'd call it a surprise, but an interesting part of the draft, a mystery. And this was the Lakers selecting D'Angelo Russell at number 2, causing Jahlil Okafor to fall to number 3. Now, in my mock draft, I suggested that the Lakers should take Okafor. However, I'm totally okay with this Russell pick. I think Russell's a solid player. The Lakers obviously wanted to take a bet. Okafor is more of a sure thing. He'll be solid. He can do it on the offensive end. Defensive end, well, I'm not so convinced. I don't think he can really do it on the defensive end, but on the offensive end, we all know what he can bring there. Russell is more of a boom or bust type of player, I guess you could say. I think he's going to be a star. He's going to be amazing. Or he's going to be awful. He's going to be one of those super high picks who got hyped up and ended up being nothing. It's hard to tell because he did have great stats, and he does look to have a lot of potential. But is that just because of the fact that he was on an Ohio State team that lacked depth and lacked talent, and probably may have not even gotten to the NCAA tournament without him? So it's really hard to tell with him. The Lakers selecting Russell may have been the smartest pick they could make, and may have been a really poor decision. Especially given the fact that Their guards, I mean, Jordan Clarkson they already have, and I think he's a great up-and-coming player. I think as time goes by, he'll become more and more effective for that team. All right, and now let's move on to the number 4 overall pick, Kristaps Porzingis. Love this decision by the New York Knicks. I know Phil Jackson hasn't done the job exactly as expected so far, not exactly given the Knicks good results, solid results at all, but this was a great decision. I know in the NBA draft, all the Knicks fans were booing. There was one little kid who was almost crying. And that's just because there isn't enough game tape on him. He's European. So people really, they don't get to see fully what he can bring to the table. The game tape isn't there. However, I love his upside. I love it. I think he can do so much. He's over 7 feet tall, and I don't know if I've ever seen someone this tall that can shoot with this much range. He's amazed me what he can do. I mean, he can do everything on the court. I just love him. And I know there are also some doubts given the fact that NBA or international players that were drafted in the lottery have not been successful given players. Number 1 overall pick, Andrea Bargnani. There was also Bismack Biyombo, Hasheem Thabeet, Yi Jianlin, and Jan Vesely. I don't care about the past. Kristaps Porzingis is different. He is so talented. I don't know how many times to say it. I've already reiterated this many times. I'm just going to say it again. He is great decision. I believe he will break the streak of busting of international players in the drafted in the lottery. Now on to some other surprises. 5th overall pick, Mario Hezonja was selected by the Orlando Magic. 8th overall pick, the Detroit Pistons selected Stanley Johnson. Now those don't sound like big surprises, so why am I calling them a surprise? The reason I'm calling them a surprise is because Justice Winslow was still on the board. Yes, Justice Winslow was still there. You heard me correctly. He ended up being drafted 10th by the Heat. I don't understand that. I don't understand why they passed up on Winslow. I feel like, similar to Tyus Jones, he stepped up in March Madness. He's proven he's clutch. He has solid stats. I mean, he has more upside than both these players in my mind. I think he can do so much on the court, and he's surprisingly athletic at times. I think he's a great player. I mean, I don't understand why, especially given that negative stigma that goes with picking international players. I mean, you hear that so much with Porzingis at number 4, excuse me. But Hezonja at number 5, you never really hear. I don't understand why. And Stanley Johnson at number 8. I mean, Hezonja, I can understand why they would pick him. He does have upside. I mean, another problem with him I have is his attitude. Teammates generally dislike him strongly because he's cocky, he's selfish on the court. And this is not only my opinion, this is the many people's opinions on his team in Barcelona. They know him as selfish, and they don't like him. Selfish on the court. They just don't like him in general. So is that going to fit with this Orlando Magic roster? I don't know if the Magic really want that, and he needs to fix that up, I would say. Stanley Johnson at number 8. I know he keeps on saying he's the best player in this draft. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. He's the best player in this draft in his dreams. I don't. Why does he say that? I don't really know, because it just makes people's expectations go higher for him. I mean, he's a solid player. I like him. And I mean, I actually had him going 8th to the Pistons in my mock draft, and I think the Pistons should have taken it 8, but that was assuming Winslow was gone. I just don't get it. Winslow is so talented. All right, moving on. I've said enough. I've repeated myself many times now. Willie Cauley-Stein at number 6. Arguably, left me speechless. My jaw was dropped open. Not from surprise, but from horror. This was arguably the worst pick in the draft in my mind. Especially because the front office, they look like they don't want to trade Cousins away. So they don't need a big man. What is his upside? Defense. Does he do anything else? No. He does nothing else except play defense. He can't score. He can't rebound. He plays defense. Okay, that is valuable to a team. Should you pick a player who plays defense 6th overall? No! You don't pick someone who's only good at one little aspect of the game, defense, 6th overall, and you can say he can grow in those aspects of the court, like offense and rebounding. But he's not a freshman anymore. He's a junior. And his stats, his efficiencies as time has gone by, so from a freshman to a junior now, it's actually become worse. He's a less efficient player than when he was a freshman. He's a junior now. There's no excuses. He's just not a smart pick in my mind. When I say efficiency, I don't mean his stats are worse. I mean stats per minute are worse. Now on to Frank Kaminsky at number 9. In my mind, this is another awful pick. I don't get this. He was great in college. I'm not arguing. He 100% deserved the Naismith Trophy. He was the best player in college this year, no doubt. But does that mean you're the best player in the pros? No, it doesn't. If you think about the recent college players of the year, they generally have not been successful in the NBA. I mean, I'm just naming a few: Trey Burke, Doug McDermott. Those two don't really look like they're going to be successful, and I don't fully understand why Frank Kaminsky is going to be any different. He's slow. He's not athletic. His rebounding numbers are okay in college, but they're not going to be that great in the pros. His game just isn't going to translate. He scores. He does nothing else. He scores. Okay, I think he's gonna flame out in the pros. I really do. And I think it's maybe he'll be a role player who can come in and give a scoring boost once in a while. But that doesn't warrant a top 10 pick. I think Cauley-Stein and Kaminsky were both the two picks those are the two that I just didn't understand. I think those are the two clear picks that were just bad decisions. However, I do have to compliment Frank Kaminsky and his suit with the tanks on the inside. Great look. Loved it. Anyway, moving on to another bad pick. This would be Terry Rozier at number 16. What? What were they thinking? What were the Celtics thinking? He was a late first rounder. I had him going 29th to Brooklyn. A late first rounder at best. I could have seen him as a second rounder. But the Celtics decided to take him in the middle of the first round, 16th overall. What has he shown? I mean, what has he done for this team? I don't really know what he brings to the table that makes him so special. That would make you take the guy over someone like Tyus Jones or Sam Decker. I mean, excuse me, I'm not including positional needs there. I just don't get it, and I think that's what I have to say, because he's just a poor decision maker. And shot selection, the turning the ball over, the court vision, he doesn't really pass well. I mean, he plays defense well. He's fast. I can't say much more, and the problem is he's already 21 years old. And most of these players going to the draft are, not I'd say most, but many of the great ones that are picked around this area of the upper half of the first round, they're 19, 20 still. So we'll have to see how this pick works out. I don't understand what the Celtics were thinking taking him. And now I'm going to move on to more of the positives of the draft. I've said enough about the negatives, so there's a few here. I already mentioned Tyus Jones, 24 to Cleveland. Great pick there. I just love him. Now also, Kevin Looney at 30th. I know I put him as an overrated player on Instagram. However, I said he was overrated given the fact that I assumed he'd be going around 20th overall. I mean, if you're taking him 30th, the last pick in the first round, that's a completely different ball of wax. I think Looney, his height's a problem. But at 30, I think it's a risk worth taking. If he can overcome his height, he is talented. He has a lot of potential, and if he can overcome it, I think he can be a very good player and an asset to the Warriors. We'll have to see how that pick works out. That's up in the air again. It's hard to really predict that someone will be able to overcome their height. All right, moving on. Now we're on to the second round, and there are two that just stuck out to me. Joseph Young, Dakari Johnson. Those were by far the two biggest deals. Respectively, they were picked 43rd and 48th in the first round, and they both, I just found them as sleepers going into the draft, and I know Dakari Johnson was on my list, and Joseph Young, actually, I didn't want to put more than 10 players on that list, but Joseph Young was right outside there at 11th. I like them both a lot. I like their potential as great role players in the NBA. I really do like their talent, and I expected them to go in the upper part of the second round. To have them fall down to the mid part of it, it surprised me, and I think I was surprised, and it was a good decision. It was a good decision to pick them. And now there's one, and now I'm closing up here on my closing thing. It's about Christian Wood, UNLV power forward. I had him going, I think, 26 to the Spurs, and I think he's a late first rounder. That's who I think he is. He's solid with potential. Undrafted. Yes, I'm not kidding. He went undrafted, and it boggles me. It boggled me. Usually, there are players that fall down on the draft boards, but there's no one who goes from a late first rounder to not being drafted at all. He's not a top 60 player. That's absurd. Absurd. He's still 19, so he has time to grow. I don't get it. He can block shots. He's athletic. He plays solid defense. He rebounds. Yet he's not strong, and sometimes he has problems with shot selection. Again, he's 19. That can improve. So I don't. I'm wondering if there's something us, the public, something we don't understand. Because it's a complete mystery to me why he wouldn't have been drafted. There was no other player like that in the draft that wasn't drafted at all. I mean, I guess kind of Quinn Cook, but I could have seen him as going undrafted anyway. But anyway, Christian Wood not being drafted, there must be something we don't know. Because you can make arguments that he's not a late first rounder, he's a very early second rounder, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, fine. Not being drafted at all? No way. I just don't get it. So anyway, that is it for my first YouTube podcast, and thank you so much for listening. It was really fun for me. Once again, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'll be trying to post content daily if I get the reception I would like. Please like the video. And also, what are your thoughts? Comment below. And also follow me on Instagram, Fantasy Basketball Advice, if you aren't already. So I had a great time about the general NBA thoughts, and if this gets the reception I'll receive, tomorrow I will begin with the first team on my NBA draft analysis, and that would be the Minnesota Timberwolves, because they got the first overall pick. I will be going in chronological order. And that would be so that'll be an interesting post. So hopefully, it's going to be on Instagram or YouTube either way. I'll figure it out. I'll probably post it on my Instagram feed somewhere to let you guys all know. So yeah, just thank you guys so much once again. Hope you enjoyed. Comment below about your thoughts about what I'm saying in the video, my thoughts about sports, just your general thoughts about it. Alright, thank you so much. Bye, everyone. This was Fantasy Basketball Advice.